Today, we are talking about the icky and the scary part of being an entrepreneur, which is sales. For so many of you that listen to this podcast, I know you didn't come from a sales background, much like I didn't. And let me tell you, 5 years in, sometimes it still feels like that's a struggle. I'm really excited for you to meet today's guest, Tyler, because not only is this his bread and butter and he has lived it for so long, he also has a way of just turning it around where those of us who don't come from a sales background know exactly how to understand that sales is just the way that we explain our value. And so I'm really excited for y'all to meet Tyler. This is Overwhelmed and Over It, where success doesn't have to cost you your sanity as an entrepreneur. I'm your host, Gabs, and I bring you 10-ish minutes of real founder stories and their real solutions without any fluff, so that way you can build a business without burning yourself out. Let's get to it. I am so excited to introduce today's guest because he got introduced to me because his work preceded his reputation, which is always the nicest way when you're an entrepreneur to know that you're getting introduced to other friends out in this space. Tyler, if you want to take a second and introduce yourself to the Overwhelmed and Overt community and tell us who you are and how you got started on this journey.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I'm Tyler. I live in suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, with my wife and two kids. And I'm a sales trainer. So I've been in sales my whole career. Started selling Cutco knives in high school, and have sold a lot of things since then. But got the itch to do a little bit of training and coaching and enablement about 5 years ago. And I've done that for businesses, a day job. And I've also done a lot of consulting and sales training and coaching for teams and for individuals on my own as well. So super excited to be talking to you and your audience today about sales. So
Yeah, that's the thing that we're all scared of. It's icky. We don't like it. We're not sure how to do it. So you've got the magic that we need to hear today, Tyler.
oh yeah. Well, I don't know about the magic, but yeah, I understand why a lot of people are so intimidated by sales. When I first got into sales, I was super intimidated. I think a lot of people think, oh, you got to have this big personality and you got to be so gregarious and outgoing and you got to interrupt people's day and it's just icky. We've all had that used car sales experience that was a little bit too aggressive. So I think it does get a bad rap. But to me, I think sales is really simple. It's all about just clarifying your value, it's connecting with folks, and it's starting good conversations. Hopefully, a few of those conversations turn into clients. So,
The clarifying the value piece is actually how I got introduced to you. We have
yeah.
a mutual friend that we know on LinkedIn, and she and I were just having a casual coffee chat and, tell me about yourself and tell me what you do. And she gave me her elevator pitch. And I don't necessarily love that phrase, but she started to explain what she did. And the way that she explained what she did, it was like the veil lifted off from my eyes. I was just like, it's so clear. And then she was like, all Tyler. And so I was like, I gotta meet him. I gotta know. So do you want to tell us maybe a little bit around how you look at explaining the value that you might bring if you are a founder and you're starting to have some of these sales conversations?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I started working with folks on their elevator pitches because even though it is kind of a nasty word, just like sales, right? It's kind of that icky feeling, but I feel like it's a great starting point, right? When we think about everybody's got an elevator pitch, whether you think you do or you don't, you probably do, because it's how you answer the question, "What do you do?" or "Tell me about yourself," or "Why should we choose you?" So kind of everyone has this answer that they say. I think what I've found is that a lot of people don't ever think about the answer. They don't ever think about, well, what should I be saying? What should I be clarifying? What should I be leading with to try to put my best foot forward? And so, what do we normally do? We just wing it, right? We wing it, whatever comes out. Usually, we're a rambling, fumbling, bumbling mess. And it may or may not leave that great first impression. I think when you think about elevator pitches, they're super important because of the primacy effect, which is basically the first thing that happens in an interaction is super important. It's one of the things that we remember a ton. The second thing we remember is the recency effect, which is the last thing that happens. So if you can nail that intro and the ending, the middle we kind of just fill in our heads, right? With kind of how things started and how things ended, but the starting sets the tone, and that's why I think your elevator pitch is so important.
Oh, so good. So good. And I always can tie it back now that content is a huge piece of the work that I do and to me is a huge piece of my sales process. And we talk right around the hook is so important because it's that very first thing that people see. It's the thing that makes people decide, do I want to stop and listen to what you have to say? And in many ways, our elevator pitch is the same way. And I love how you talk about the importance of how comfortable you feel saying it, because whether you plan to or not, you're gonna introduce yourself. And so it's like, do you feel confident in how you're introducing yourself? And I can remember, my early entrepreneur days going to like all those networking events because that's what
Right.
I was told I had to do. And it was like, hi, I'm Gabrielle and I help, and it's like you're so scared. And then it's you practice it and you tweak it and you change it and you test it and you see what resonates and you see what doesn't. And then you get to this point where you're like, I could tell the snowman outside what I do for a living, and I am comfortable telling anyone what I do for a
Right.
living because I'm proud of that work and I'm proud of what I'm doing.
100%. Yeah. And I'm glad you talked about you practice it and you tweak it because that's what I try to tell folks. Elevator pitches are dynamic, right? Just like the hooks of your email or your social media post or the front page copy on your website, all of that's dynamic, right? It's subject to change. It should change as you evolve, as the market evolves, as the world evolves. And so I think of your elevator pitch as that. It's not necessarily this is my pitch forever. It's this is how I introduce myself today based on what I know, based on the context of this conversation, but know that like your introduction for tomorrow might sound different, and I think that dynamic nature of it is what makes it exciting and fun, and it's ever changing and evolving. So
If you were to look back and talk to the earlier version of the founder version of yourself, what would you tell Tyler of like, hey, watch out, this thing might be a little bit difficult, or this thing's going to catch you off guard and maybe avoid this thing?
yeah, for sure. Well, I've been doing sales training and coaching, like I mentioned, for probably about 5 years or so. But I actually got my start in entrepreneurship when I was in my early 20s. I started a food truck with my then girlfriend, now wife. And so I basically had an entire early entrepreneurial adventure that was super interesting. If I could go back and talk to my 20 something self before then, I would say probably think about which industry you want to get in because the hospitality industry is very tough, long hours, and you're going to smell like a grease trap and a fryer a lot of times. So that's not super appealing. When I think back to what would I tell myself before starting this newer journey in sales training and coaching, I think it would be to really lean into your strengths. I think lean into what makes you you, what makes you unique. When I started, I tried to just sound and be like everyone else, right? And just
Mhm.
recite everyone else's ideas and these methods that I've heard from someone else and these things. My style is very high energy, high impact. I like doing things remotely, ironically, just because that's always how I've trained ever since COVID days, and just have always been a remote trainer. So I try to lean into that specialty. I've invested a lot into my setup here in the office. I bring high energy in a Zoom room, which is next to impossible, but incorporating things like graphics and music and energy. Because if at the end of the day, if training is boring, people usually tune out. Just like if your elevator pitch is boring, people tune out to the rest of the conversation. So I try to lean into my strengths, which is keeping things dynamic, upbeat, engaging, and I like to say kind of edutaining, right? Where I'm going to educate and entertain to an extent because I think the more people pay attention, the more they will retain and the better they'll get. So
I don't see the vibe board today, but usually I
I
see the
know.
vibe board behind
Yeah,
you.
it's back there. It's off. I didn't know if we go video on, video off, but yeah, I turn the vibe board on. I start drawing in my awful handwriting. Doctors think they have bad handwriting, but they haven't seen me write on my vibe board. So usually I'll scribble some stuff and I'll have to, enunciate what's going on because half the time people can't read it. But it's a fun tool. Again, another tool that I use to try to keep things engaging because I think, when people can see visuals, they can see things written in real time. I think it helps. It helps you to retain information and it helps to keep things interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you look forward to this year and kind of what's next for you at this chapter of the business, because I think that's important that we talk about too, right? Is like you were saying, your elevator pitch changes based upon what works, what doesn't, where the things are, but our businesses change too, even if we continue to offer the same service, but who we serve, how we serve, all of that changes. Kind of what's next for you that maybe you're like, oh, this is new for me, or this is something new that I'm stepping into that I'm still learning as I get there.
Yeah, 100%. Historically, I've worked with B2B sales teams. So I've been in B2B my whole career. And I've recently realized that there's this other audience that I'm really interested in starting to work with. And I've started to dabble working with these folks, but it's these independent solopreneurs, independent business owners who need to sell in their business, but historically probably have never had a sales role, have probably never gone through much sales training, have just kind of been winging it, kind of like we were talking about with the elevator pitch earlier. So I'm creating new services and a new community around helping solopreneurs sell better, but not in the icky, nasty way that people people think of sales, but just in an authentic human way, utilizing a lot of things that I've learned in B2B and now taking it to solopreneurs, which is a group that I'm super passionate about. I'm a solopreneur myself, and I really just love the energy around those folks. I love that they're the ones delivering on their products, so they believe in what they sell. Usually, if you don't, they're in the wrong business. But I really think this group is just a smart, passionate group of individuals, and a lot of them I think could really use a little bit of help honing some of their sales skills, some of their elevator pitches, clarifying that value, just those little slight tweaks so that they don't feel like sales is this daunting thing, is this big arduous thing. That I want it to feel simple and human and authentic. And that's why I'm leading into working with that group more this year.
And all of us solopreneurs said amen.
Yeah, for sure. I love the solopreneur community, so it's fantastic.
I do think you're right, though. Many of us have come from corporate or have come from working in these full-time roles, and it brings so many skills. But I think also there are many of us who have chosen this journey, whether it's side hustle journey or full-time journey, and maybe it wasn't even a choice. Maybe it came from a byproduct of layoffs or whatever it may be. And we're finally realizing we can build businesses based on our passions. We can build businesses based on our hobbies. We can build businesses based on these things that we absolutely love. But that doesn't mean sharing that value with someone else or convincing someone else that there's value in this work that you're doing is always the easiest part of this work. So something, I really have been leaning into a lot this year, and just what I'm really loving to talk about is we all need help and support on this journey. You can call yourself a solopreneur because maybe by legal definition, we are solopreneurs doing this alone. But really, no one should be doing entrepreneurship alone, right? Because we need mentorship, we need coaches, we need support, we need friends, we need someone to check us when we're getting off the rails or be like, you're not focused, you're heading in the wrong direction. And so, I really love that between LinkedIn and other social media platforms and podcasting and things like this, we've been able to build these networks that I can tap into you and say, hey, Tyler, I think this is what I want to introduce myself as, but I'm really struggling with it. How does that land with you? And you
Yep.
can kind of use that to bounce ideas off of. So I really love what you're building and am so excited to see it come to fruition this year.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm super excited, and like you said, I think when we think about like our elevator pitch and how we can leverage that, I think one of the biggest ways is in just growing our network, which means just meeting people, building relationships, talking to them. It can be on a podcast, right? But it can also just be offline. It can be in a DM. But I think we have to get comfortable starting conversations, because I think the more conversations we start, the higher likelihood we're going to meet people we could work with, partner with, refer. You never know where a relationship's going to go. We're all one relationship away from having that big break we need in our businesses. So I love that we've gotten connected. I love this podcast. I hope to connect with more of your listeners, and I'm super excited about the energy and the network that we're all building.
Oh, so good. Well, as you are building out your community and your services for this year, how can us at Overwhelmed and Over It help support you?
For sure. Yeah. I think the easiest way to get connected is either on LinkedIn or X, just at Tyler Lindley or at Tyler Sales Coach. And then my website's just tylerlindley.com. One of the things that I do is I offer free pitch reviews. So if you want to get your elevator pitch or any pitch for a product or service or your company reviewed by me, we can hop on the phone. I'll give you some feedback, and hopefully you'll learn something and take away. So it gives you kind of a little preview of what it might be like to work with me. And hopefully you'll get some actionable intelligence on how to improve your elevator pitch. So you can check out the link there. It's on my site or on my LinkedIn. But yeah, I'd love to check out everybody's elevator pitches and have a conversation and get to know you. So
All right, fabulous. Well, I'm so glad we got to do this, Tyler, and I'm really glad we got connected. And I'll make sure all the links are in the show notes too, so people have a really quick and easy way to get connected with you. That's all for this week's episode of Overwhelmed and Over It. I know being a founder can feel lonely, but you don't have to figure it all out by yourself. If you're craving real talk with other entrepreneurs who get exactly what you're going through, join us in the Brave Starts monthly Q&A circle. It's our judgment-free zone where no question is too basic, too messy, because trust me, we've all been there. You can grab your free spot at thebravestart.com. And please make sure we're connected on LinkedIn. I share daily reminders that the entrepreneurship roller coaster is totally normal. You're not the only one feeling overwhelmed. I'm your host, Gabs, and until next week, remember, building a business is hard enough. Let's not make it harder by doing it alone. I'll catch you in the next episode.